News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. Here it is, your closing bell for this Monday on Wall Street, where a strong earnings season and easing trade tensions helped push stocks higher. We bring you those closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 gained 71 points. NASDAQ gained 311 points. The Dow gained 516 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 3.98%. The 2-year yield at 3.45%. An appeals court will allow, for now, President Trump to deploy troops to Portland, Oregon, to counter protests against his immigration crackdown. The divided court in San Francisco lifted an order that blocked the deployment of troops to Portland. Amazon Web Services says issues continue to plague its service after a widespread outage degraded services for customers, including government agencies and financial platforms. While some companies like Robinhood and Coinbase say they've recovered, AWS says some users are still struggling to connect. Bloomberg's Sarah Fryer explains why some customers are still having problems.
When a large chunk of the internet is reliant on one service, there are all these cascading effects, right? They said there was an issue in a database that was loading incorrectly, and that just had this domino effect for a large portion of the internet.
Hear more from Bloomberg's Sarah Fryer on the Bloomberg Business Week Daily podcast. President Trump is looking ahead to his meeting in China with Xi Jinping. On the agenda in South Korea, soybeans, fentanyl, rare earth minerals, and Taiwan.
If we don't make a deal, I'm putting on an additional 100% on November 1st. I think we'll make a deal. They threatened us with rare earths, and I threatened them with tariffs, but I could also threaten them with many other things.
Trump signed an agreement with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to boost access to critical minerals and rare earths. Australia is looking to position itself as a viable alternative to China for supplies of critical minerals. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is to meet with allies in Europe after a tense meeting with President Trump last week. Trump told Zelensky he would have to make some concessions to Russia to end the war, including giving up land. Zelensky says it's very important the Europeans have a, quote, unified position with Kyiv. French President Emmanuel Macron says Zelensky will attend talks with Western allies in London this Friday. The government shutdown is now in its 20th day, and influential conservative groups are pushing Republicans to demand steep concessions from Democrats in exchange for extending health care subsidies. That could prolong the shutdown. Former Republican Congressman Patrick McHenry tells Bloomberg we could see some movement soon.
November 1st is when the Obamacare subsidies expire, or the notices go out that it's expiring. So we see a landing point here for the Democrats who have raised the shutdown and raised the health care issue of the expiring tax credits.
Patrick McHenry is a former Republican congressman from North Carolina, a former chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, and a Bloomberg contributor. House Speaker Mike Johnson says the longer this shutdown lasts, the more dangerous it becomes.
America is the last great superpower on the planet, but we have to maintain that status. And if we get behind on funding or personnel or any of these projects that we're involved in that are at a level that we can't talk about in here, it's very serious.
National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett tells CNBC the White House is going to have to look very closely at, quote, stronger measures if the government shutdown doesn't end this week, without giving specifics. Argentina Central Bank and the U.S. Treasury have signed a currency swap line for $20 billion to preserve price stability and promote sustainable economic growth. The deal aims to bolster Argentina's currency, which has continued to sell off despite interventions from the U.S. Treasury. Apple shares hit their first record of 2025 after Loop Capital upgraded the stock to buy from hold, citing positive iPhone demand trends. The recent strength comes amid signs of stronger than expected demand for its latest iPhone lineup, with the iPhone 17 series outselling the iPhone 16. Apple shares gained a little more than 4% in regular trading. Glass Lewis & Company is urging Tesla shareholders to vote against CEO Elon Musk's compensation package. That recommendation echoes that of proxy firm Institutional Shareholder Services, which is also urging shareholders to vote against the plan. Tesla has called the Glass-Lewis recommendation misguided, saying it disregards prior shareholder votes in favor of Musk's compensation. Tesla earnings will be released on Wednesday. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.